Hi, this is Professor Charles. So the first question we have when it comes to quoting is whether we should quote or not. Here I am staring at a screen, something you're probably familiar with. I'm writing a motion for summary judgment, and I need some law. And this is a real brief I'm writing. It's a breach of fiduciary duty is the issue. And I did some research and I found that there's a court rule that gives us the standard for summary judgment. And I found some case law interpreting that court rule. So here it is for Arizona. This whole paragraph here is the motion for summary judgment. So the question here is, should I quote this? And the answer is yes. When it comes to codified law, and court rules is codified law, you generally want to quote. The question of how much we'll talk about next, but yes, you generally want to quote elements and black letter rules. Now, here's a case that is interpreting that court rule. And I like this line here because it really helps my case. Essentially, the rule was intended as an efficient instrumentality to expedite the business and so forth. So I really like that. So this is a black letter rule that helps us understand this court rule better. So because it's a black letter rule, I will most likely quote it. So codified law, elements, black letter rules, we quote, and case law, when we're getting into like the facts of the case, the court's holding, the court's reasoning, all of this information here about the court's holding, and there's a whole bunch of cases here. All of this you paraphrase, okay? For sure, paraphrase. So to summarize here, when it comes to asking whether you should quote, the answer is yes if you're quoting elements, black letter rules, and codified law, things like that, but you do it sparingly. We're not going to quote the whole thing. And then no, you shouldn't quote if you're just talking about case law in terms of the facts of the case, the holding, and the reasoning. You're going to paraphrase that stuff. But if there's a really beautiful phrase or sentence in a case, that's not black letter law, but I mean within the court's holding and reasoning that you really like, the phrase that pays, then you may quote that. Okay, so that answers should I quote. We'll move on to the next question of how much, a little or a lot, in the next section. Bye.